Hello and welcome to the Sidekick Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm here speaking to the co-creators of the Sidekick app and community, James Shrager and Matthew Halstead. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks, Michael.
For having us.
Thank you for being the official first guest to your own podcast, to your new podcast.
Hard to get an invite, but thanks for having us.
I almost didn't invite James.
Well, I figured this is a kind of, I guess, like an episode 0 of setting up what Sidekick is as an app and as a community, and also how you guys kind of got started, really, what the whole journey is. And then we've obviously got future plans for the podcast. So hopefully anybody listening to this can get all of the background that they need to know to then kind of embark on this podcast journey as well as their Sidekick journey. That's the plan anyway.
That's the plan. And also a big shout out to you, Michael. Thanks so much for being proactive and, and pulling this all together. It's been awesome. Thanks, man.
Good. Thank you. Well, let's get started with way back. How did you both first meet and what led you to ultimately create the Sidekick app and community? Should we start with you, Matt?
Actually, I'm going to defer to James.
Do it.
James,
Cool.
Where did we start? Where did you start?
Well, where did we meet? We met at university in 2004, 2005. We were both at Nottingham. Had quite a lot of mutual friends at university, and then we became friends and stayed friends ever since. The Sidekick app started, and the community idea started about 2 years ago. So I was struggling with some mental health issues at the time, and I realized through sort of that experience that some really simple things kind of helped me, like reading an inspiring quote or seeing a nudge on a website or something. And I was just having breakfast with Matt one morning before I started a new job. He came to support me because I was a little bit anxious about the new job. And I said to him, Matt, I'm just going to build a little app on my phone that sends me inspiring quotes and nudges and things throughout the day. And Matt, being Matt, got really, really excited about it because he himself had been struggling a little bit with his mental health. And he said, let's do this. Let's make this a big thing. Let's involve lots of people. Let's try and do this to help all the other people. There must be lots of people in our situation, and let's do this. So that was kind of where we started, as I said, about 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, and the reason I asked James to start first is because ultimately, he approached me with his worries, and he was honest and open about them. Like you said, we've been friends since university, but our friendship a lot has been, I remember even on your stag do, James, as we were left alone at the end of the evening, we had a deep and meaningful talk about our mental health struggles. Like when everything goes quiet, this is where James and I have always talked. We've always talked open and honestly about each other. And, what we've realized as we've kind of developed Sidekick is that everyone's got a sidekick. Like James is my sidekick. James has got other sidekicks. I've got other sidekicks, but there's always some person out there, family, friend, even someone anonymous that really can, provide that support. And I think, through my struggles, like with James as well, we've certainly realized that there's no one magic bullet for mental health. You can't go and see one therapist or do one approach to fix or to change or to adapt how you're feeling or to boost yourself in terms of a bit more confidence or positivity. It's about taking all those nuggets of wisdom from lots of different places. And James, you've seen many a person. I've seen many a person in terms of therapy, a psychiatrist. I've got my own mental health toolkit. James has got his own mental health toolkit, and they're all these nuggets of wisdom. And we just realized when we were looking at, downloading some of these apps to kind of, to see, well, what would help us personally, you just realize, you're like, hold on, this doesn't work for me, or this does work a little bit, but also this one and this one. So I've got about 50 apps on my phone, each asking me how I'm feeling every 10 minutes. And just makes me anxious, to be honest. So James being James and the genius he is when it comes to kind of creativity, was like, no, do you know what? I think we could build something better. And that's really how it started, right, James?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of these apps out there, they can make people feel quite pressured for them to work. So someone might say to you, oh my God, you've got to try this meditation app. Meditation is just incredible for me. And then you might download it and it might not work for you. And then instead of thinking, well, maybe meditation is not the right thing for me, maybe I need to do more breath work or coping statements, you would think, oh, what's wrong with me? Everyone's telling me about this meditation lark and it's not working. So, we wanted to create a space where people could try lots of different things. And the other side of that decision was that for me personally, and for Matt as well, I think lots of different things helped us. So it wasn't just about trying lots of things to find the one thing. It was about finding the combination of things that work for you in different situations.
And ultimately it's about, and this is the beauty about when you're developing some form of like digital product like an app, it's about experimentation. Like I've taken this approach that during my 20s, life for me was about, okay, I'm in a, my baseline when I was kind of in my kind of late teens was kind of like, I feel pretty low quite a lot. I want to get to a point where I feel quite happy quite a lot, quite positive. Okay, so how am I going to do it? So it's painful and relentless kind of experimentation on lots of different things. Some work, some don't, and I'm a big advocate for designing your life in a way that will help boost your own kind of, it will help empower yourself in terms of boosting your confidence, boosting your positivity. And ultimately, this is a kind of, this is a setup that we've, how we've created Sidekick. But the actual process in which James and I have actually built Sidekick, in terms of actually co-creating this app, this community-based non-profit app, and a community that could power it, is around experimentation. It's around trying things. It's around iterating. It's around design. It's about creativity. The whole process is messy. It's unorganized, but it's what's come of it has been way more than we could ever have hoped.
Yeah. You guys are constantly evolving the product and the community, and as you would kind of evolve the way you deal with your own mental health.
Absolutely.
That sounds good. So, I mean, I imagine, judging by how it started, James, you've had experience building an app before. And how did you kind of figure out where to begin with this one? Had you built apps before that you could translate those skills into building Sidekick?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that there's actually, when we were building Sidekick, Matt and I were kind of reflecting that I think a lot of either the apps I'd done before, the experience I'd gained doing them, have sort of in a strange way led to this point. So prior to this, I was tinkering with an app called Wing It, which was an app that distributed micro content to people based on where they were. So if you're at Wimbledon, for example, you could read a short history of Wimbledon. And the idea was it was card based. It was meant to be quite easy, digestible information. Realized quite early on that had a challenge in terms of scalability. So kind of parked it. And this was another side project I was working at the time. But then when we decided to put guides to mental health into the Sidekick app, I had all of the templates and all of the code built for that. But my experiences with app development probably started about 8 or 9 years ago. So I've had experience. I used to do it full time as a job, both as a developer, but also I had my own application, which was like the board game Monopoly, but the board was the real world. So you could go around with your phone buying up Twickenham Stadium, Heathrow Airport, your local pub. And where people visited those locations by checking in on Facebook and saying they were there, or another platform, then that would generate you rent in the game. So I had quite a lot of experience, but for the last few years I've been working in a slightly different industry.
How do we get to play that? Did you ever launch that, or that's just?
Oh yeah, that's
James being very modest. James being very modest, aren't you?
Just a little Monopoly
app. How many downloads did Landlord get?
I mean, it's still going now. I launched it just before the Olympics in 2012. I remember actually, I was at Dorney Lake watching the some of the rowing, and the server went down, and I was like panicked. And I was like, Polly, my wife, I was like, Polly, I've got to go home. Like the server's crashed, thinking that these tiny things, when you've got like 500 users, is going to completely
Poor Polly.
kill your application. No, it's still going now. I actually sold it in 2015 to a company in Poland. They're still running it. They've got quite a big team now. I think it's had about 15 million downloads or something worldwide.
15 million. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah, just a casual 0.001% of the population of the world.
Yeah, sure. But compared to an Instagram or something, we're not quite there yet.
True.
No, I guess if compared to that, but yeah, compared to a little side project that you were doing in your spare time, that's pretty good. We need to do a landlord podcast after this, I think.
Yeah, it'd be good.
So, Matt, had you had any involvement with apps before, or you
No.
were the kind of the ideas man who said, let's actually make this bigger than we were thinking?
Yeah, so I think, as Jay said, I've always been quite an excitable character. I like new ideas, but no, I hadn't had any necessary experience in app development. I'm not a developer, but I'd had quite a lot of experience in technology projects. So, like James and I started off in the city, and both of us became chartered accountants, but realised that this wasn't really for us. And a week later, once I qualified, I jumped ship, joined a punk rock band as a drummer, and turns out I'm not a very good drummer compared to what I thought I was, and ended up going back to my kind of accountancy skills, but more in a kind of trying to do it in a bit more meaningful capacity. Ended up working with a friend who was running a non-profit in Nigeria over the Niger Delta, helping communities who are affected by the impact of oil. So a lot of governance issues, a lot of corruption, a lot of democratization issues, a lot of oil theft issues. So it's a really complicated place. But as part of that, they're really trying to pushing the digital element as well. So we ended up building quite a few digital mapping platforms. So using a lot of GIS technology, geographic information science. So I ended up working a lot with developers, with GIS specialists, to map certain aspects of the Niger Delta. One was oil spills, one was gas flares. So we were doing a lot of remote sensing. So I got to grips with the language of technology, and then I moved on to doing a lot of election monitoring. So we monitored the elections in Niger Delta in 2015. Also did 2019, deploying new technologies to help citizens report safe and confidential information about what's actually going on down in some of the kind of the deepest, darkest parts of a region, which is shadowed by a lot of violence around elections. So I think it's a lot about the language, like the way I work now and have worked over the last 10 years. Like I said before, it's all about experimenting with doing lots of different things, and I've been able to pick up the language of lots of different things. So I can speak the language of finance. I can speak finance to someone who's a developer. I can speak a development language to someone who's a scientist. I do a part-time PhD on the side, so I can talk chemistry to James, who's a coder. You know what I mean? So for me, it's about language and translation. But then at the same time, I like new ideas. But one thing I've found that in some previous kind of iterations of other ideas is that a lot of it's not necessarily money driven. Money's fine. It's more around that this isn't a passion of mine. And James and I, have bonded for years over our own struggles, the issue and the idea of mental health. Working in Nigeria, I've become really interested in community-based approaches, so trying to do things in a different way. And that's really, those ideas, chimed with James, and fundamentally, like I'm overwhelmed that I've got a co-creator for the last 2 years who actually has the same values, and that is very, I know that's rare because I've been in partnerships before where that necessarily isn't the case, and we are very similar on a very, very deep level in terms of how we see the structure and the future of companies, of communities, of industries which we find exploitative, and Sidekick was built as we've put those values and those it's a principle-based approach so that we can build something that is going to put a flag in the sand and say, actually, we don't agree with what others are doing. This is how we're going to do it, and we want to make it open and accessible for everyone.
So it's very much a passion project, and you can tell that the way you both talk about it, but the fact that you're devoting your time as well as normal day jobs and PhDs and everything, you you've both got this passion, and which is luckily a shared passion and a friendship, which, I mean, how is that working with a friend? You always hear people, some people say, oh, don't go into business with a friend, but actually you guys have done it and you're making it work.
Yeah, I think as Matt said, we don't really see this as a business, and it doesn't quite have that pressures, right? It's actually a fun journey. And I think when we first started, we had really low ambitions, in the sense we were just like, look, let's just make something for me and you. If it works, fantastic. And then if we find someone else it works for, great. And if we find 1 million people, that's fantastic. But ultimately, this doesn't feel like a job. And we're both using the skills that we enjoy using to work on something that's beneficial to us and hopefully lots of people. And as Matt said, I think just the reaction we've had over the last month or so since we actually started putting it out there more widely has just been phenomenal.
And very overwhelming, to be honest. Like, for us who are just, we've been in it, just me and James, for a very long time. And the fact that people, like yourself, Michael, that you actually want to be involved, and you want to take ownership of a part of Sidekick and make it your own, that's exactly what we've always dreamed of, and it's starting to come true, which is, and also, like, we launched Sidekick during, frankly, the most difficult times of our lives. We'd both got just, our wives were pregnant, or James just had his first child. So anyone who who thinks that they can't do something as a result of, oh, I haven't got enough time or stuff like that, well, you can if it's a passion, and that passion keeps you up late at night, and that passion also gets the support from your other halves as well, because they see you loving what you're doing, you're excited, and that's what we're trying to do, to try and turn our passion into something real.
And ultimately it helped you, I'm guessing, through that tough time, because you had this to focus on with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the tools as well. So a lot of as I said at the start, the genesis of this was my own struggles, and I was seeing a few different professionals, lots of different techniques like hypnotherapy, CBT, acceptance commitment therapy, and I kind of found there was little bits of each that resonated with me, and so I put them in the app. So as Matt said, he has his own toolkit, I have my own toolkit. So I have breathing exercises I do once a day. I have a relaxation audio that I do when I'm potentially going into something that I find stressful. I have coping statements that I read just before, say, a big work pitch. So the idea was to kind of be that toolkit, that therapist in your pocket. And that was the idea behind the app, and enable people to find what works for them in different situations and create something that's accessible when they need it. Because let's face it, to actually, it's a sad fact, but to be able to see therapists or seek professional help is actually a privilege, and it's a very small number of people that can afford it. I reached out to the NHS talking therapies when I was going through my struggles a few years ago, and I think it was sort of like a 6-month wait to see someone. So they just gave me a few things to do kind of online. And I think that's one of our fundamental beliefs, that people should be empowered to and have access to the tools to support their own mental health.
Because there's probably a massive portion of people out there, and actually I'm probably one of them, that haven't even thought about getting their own toolkit and what the possibilities are to be a part of that. And actually, going back to what you guys were saying about how, ever since you've been friends, you've always been able to talk about your mental health to each other. That's a big thing that a lot of friends potentially don't have, especially guys, I think. But I imagine it's across the board. So, do you think that is changing as time progresses, that people are kind of more aware of their mental health and the fact that they can make a toolkit? Or is that what you're hoping to do to help with Sidekick?
I think it's partly what we're trying to help with, and I think so the community itself has 3 lots of activities. So the app is kind of falling under the creating tools and organizing information, but we have a third stream which is about encouraging positive conversations about mental health, which is of course why we're sort of trying to start this podcast. But it's interesting that there's 2 things with mental health. There's one in terms of the stigma that I think is, you're right, sort of falling away, and it's becoming a lot more normal. But I think also the thresholds for talking about things is quite different to, say, physical health. And I think that when people say mental health, I think people get confused with mental illness, and they sort of think you can only talk about it if something's wrong, like you're depressed or you're feeling low. They don't realize it's actually day-to-day thing. And I saw something on Instagram a few days ago. There was a graphic that someone had shared that said, you wouldn't wait for every bone in your body to break before you fixed your broken arm. And that's kind of, that's the thing with mental health. It's like people have it during the day, like being anxious about a work meeting, or worrying that you said the wrong thing to someone, to one of your friends, and you've upset them, and all these kind of things is all mental health. It's not mental illness, it's just mental health. It's the way you think. And so I think people often leave it very late before they reach out to people, if they're lucky enough to have them. And as you said, I think men in particular do struggle to be open. Personally, I don't, and Matt doesn't, and that's why we share our struggles. But I'd say out of all of our mutual friends, Matt, I think very few of us would ever come to talk to us if they were struggling.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even if you try and push the conversation, it's very it's very difficult to get people to talk. But that's okay, right? Like people will talk when they're ready. And I think by if more people are open to talking about it and are known to be open to talking about it, then it's amazing. Like occasionally you might just get this random text or a call and just say, "Oh, do you remember we had a chat like a few months ago?" And I went, yeah. And they might go, "Well, yeah, actually I have been struggling." And I thought, do you reckon if we could like meet up and have a chat and stuff like that? And you're like, okay, yeah, for sure. So I think being open and and not pushing away those kind of conversations is fundamentally important. And again, that the name sidekick encapsulates that. Like it's like James is my sidekick. James has built himself as an app. I mean, that is his dream anyway, to digitize himself. But he's basically digitized himself. He's digitized me. He's digitized all our other testers that have come up with interesting ideas. He's digitized, some CBT PDFs, worksheets. And that approach has started to, build Sidekick as someone who can, literally get out their phone and go, okay, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm not going to might talk to someone, but it might give me a prompt to say, do you know what? Call your family or friend, call someone who you can talk with this stuff through, and just gently nudges you, provide you with that safe space to be able to do that. And I think, I think, I would hope that will continue. And frankly, I mean, at the moment, the wellness and wellbeing industry is enormous, and valued so, and I think it can only be more positive. I think where we start to diverge from that is, as an industry grows, it becomes a lot about the marketing. And, we see a lot of, elements of, I don't know, dishonesty and, people being disingenuous, encouraging people to have conversation, but actually the whole game is actually to take the data that's underneath it. We don't believe in that. That's not right. In our view, we shouldn't be commoditizing mental health. We shouldn't be. Some people think we are, and that's what will progress some very smart tools to be able to detect mental health problems. That I'm sure there's a space for that. But for us, it's about helping a very broad population of people who don't necessarily have mental illness at all. They're just feeling low. They've had a hard time. God, they've had a kid and they've been up all night and they're feeling really low. They just need a little pick me up. I'm sure we can all relate to that, right?
Yes, definitely. I think you're right about what some of the other mental well-being and mental health kind of brands are doing out there, in terms of sort of, even as much as, so your app is free. There's friends of mine that have said in the last few weeks, particularly during this whole lockdown period, I've downloaded this app, and you can listen to a free meditation, and then you've got to subscribe for £10 a month. And I think a lot of them have kind of monetized, like you say, monetize mental well-being and kind of capitalizing off of it. And that I guess that is because mental health is big now, and there is a big awareness of it, and it's big industry, I guess. So yeah.
And it's that whole kind of, I think, it just sums up, we just don't think it's right. Like,
Yeah.
people will argue that you need to access enormous populations to capture data to build these advanced machine learning AI solutions to detect better instances of mental health, mental illness. Yeah, there's definitely a space for that, but where's the space for people actually to feel safe and secure in themselves? And what we want to do is provide that safe space, allow people to experiment with a range of exercise, with the range of content that is agnostic to a particular belief, and go, okay, yeah, I'm going to build this. I'm going to build this into my toolkit. And also, I think for us, it's a lot about attribution. It's about saying when something's good, we'll attribute, when something's good and we've got it from external, we attribute it to someone else. So our expectation, if someone likes, for example, if someone likes meditation, great, try some meditation on our app, and then we'll point you to a great meditation app or some great meditation content. You leave our app and go and live a very happy, fulfilling, mindful life. Frankly, that means we've done our job.
Yeah. That's your mission, is not to keep people within your app and only your app, and not kind of signpost them to things that are maybe more relevant to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so what made you decide on the name Sidekick? You've kind of explained, I guess it's almost like a human version of it's an app version of the human James. But did you throw around some other names? Did you have something else in mind, or did you both kind of settle on it quite quickly?
No, we settled in it quickly. We had some other options, but we very quickly came back to Sidekick. Is that right, James?
Yeah, it's right. I can't. You sort of put me on the spot. I can't really remember where it came from. I think
James wanted Sidekick. I suggested some others. He was like, "No, it's about Sidekick," and I was like, "Yeah, actually, it is about Sidekick. You're right."
Yeah, real democracy here.
It was quickly decided. This is what it's.
I think we wanted something that kind of conjured up someone there who's always got your back, and also the idea of like the therapist in your pocket. So you've always got someone there that's not necessarily your friend when you need it, but of course it's an addition to the other support networks that you might have. And it just felt like a good name. And then Matt tried to change it a few times, but we came back to Sidekick eventually.
Yeah. But the thing is like, and I think that's the thing about like this kind of partnership and creating this. Like, if an idea is best, it doesn't matter if it comes from you or comes from someone else. It's like, no, that idea is best. So if and I think sometimes you've got to, when you're designing this, especially when working closely in partnership and building a community, you've got to put your egos aside and say, actually, okay, these are the reasons I don't agree with what you're saying, but actually they don't outweigh what you're saying about actually this name encapsulate everything we're trying to achieve. Like, Sidekick is exactly what we're trying to achieve. It is a, you are trying to, it is a friendly, safe, anonymous, secure place where you can experiment, where you can think, you can reflect on yourself, you can learn about yourself, and basically, hopefully, starting to replicate some of the kind of the very hard conversations that you may have with someone, which is very difficult to start with. So that's why we want to create tools and organize information, but also then have those conversations, because when you feel ready and empowered to do that, then you can start talking about it, right?
Definitely. No, it's a good name. I like it. It's just not if you say it too quickly on a podcast, it sounds like psychic, which we've now learned.
Yeah, we might bring some psychic tools in. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Open to all.
We're constantly evolving. So what's your overall mission with Sidekick, and what do you ultimately hope the app will achieve during its lifespan?
I don't know if we've gone that far, have we, Matt, in terms of that far in the future. I think we've got kind of 6 priorities for the rest of this year. As I say, the app is just one piece of what we're doing. So we kind of think of things as the community and our community priorities. So I think we want to raise awareness for the community. I think we want to raise awareness in terms of brand. I think we want to develop partnerships with people and organizations who believe in our mission, share our values, and have interesting things to say. Want to build the community. So as I said, we've been blown away. I mean, since a month ago, I think we've now got yourself and about 14 other people all giving their time for free because they want to use the things that they love doing to to do something that they believe in. So we've got a designer, we've got an Android developer, we've got marketing people, content writers. So actually, that's sort of more of that gives us quite a lot of buzz, and I think we want to really grow the community and build awareness of what we're doing, as well as obviously driving downloads of the app and getting it on Android so it's accessible to the widest possible demographic that we can. And then finally, just develop more content. I think there's so much good content out there. There's so many people who have lots to say, and maybe because they don't have the budget or they don't have the networks to get it out there, it gets lost. So I think we want to try and aggregate as much as we can. And we've already had lots of people the last few weeks offer to give us their content, to write for us, to share what we're doing. So I think it's really about growing this community side. And then I think the app downloads and that side of things will kind of just go hand in hand. But we're not too interested in kind of these vanity metrics. I think we're just interested in growing as a community, getting more people involved, and hearing how all the wonderful ways that sidekicks help them.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree with that. You've got, I think what's brilliant about any form of like creative project or creative process is that you've got no idea where it's going to go. And actually, if you have an idea where it's going to go, yes, you can have an overarching vision, you can have a purpose, you can have a mission. They're guiding principles. That's, for us, that's not an end goal. It's what drives us forward. And we've got no idea where this will take us. Working with 15 awesome volunteers like yourself, Michael, like if we stifle that by saying this is the direction we're going in, we could miss out on an opportunity, which could be enormous. So we are going to bring everything into the mix, let all ideas flow, come up with, a way for the community to say, yeah, this is exactly the path that we all agree with. Then we'll go and do it. And the thing what's really useful is that we've got everything in house, and also we've come this far through with some of the most difficult parts of our lives, and we've got this far already, having not, frankly spent a penny, so. From my perspective, I'm excited because I'm like, wow, we've done quite a lot so far. Think what we can do in the next 9 months when we got 15 other awesome people who are going to really going to push this along as a community owned asset and project.
Yeah, and even from my side, just so I guess I've probably been part of the community for a couple of weeks, but even in those 2 weeks, seeing how it's grown and how it's so proactive and like it's like a happy group to be a part of.
Yeah.
And just seeing how quickly we can produce things. I think one of the community had an idea about doing a video for Mental Health Week on the Thursday or something.
Yeah.
By the Sunday that had been scripted and animated and was kind of ready to go. So it shows the power of a community like this, where everybody's sort of driving forward and doing something that they're passionate about. It's really good.
Yeah. It shows the power of a belief. It shows the power in having a why, having a statement. Why are we doing this, and having people bought into it. People who set up startups, they're driven often by, I must get funding and I must hire loads of people and I must have a solid business model. But actually, you can just see in the last few weeks what you can achieve if people are giving their time to do something they're passionate about, and they're not being told, oh, please do this, when that might not be quite their skill set. They're actually saying, I share your belief, I share your mission, I believe in what you're trying to do, and I have a skill set, and I love getting out of bed to do this. So look what you can do with a group of like-minded people. And I think, as Matt said, what we've done with 15 people is incredible, and I'd love to see what we could do with 100,000 people.
Sky's the limit, right? But I think, but also we do recognise that we are in a very, very unique time when it comes to the idea of community and mental health during this pandemic. Mental health is at the forefront of it's outside of COVID-19 related news. It's talking about the mental health impacts of it. So when the pandemic hit, we were planning to launch kind of back end of the year. But when this hit, like, I got on the phone to James. I was like, we've got to get this launched. How are we going to do this? I've got my friends calling me going, where's your app? I need your help. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll try and do it. And both of us were working like madly at the time anyway, with other projects. And once that finished, we just got our heads down and just got it done. But then that whole conversation around mental health, and has brought a lot of these volunteers into it, because it's firmly on the front of people's minds. People are worried about their own mental health, and actually, one thing we found in this project is that by participating in a project, you boost yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Your confidence goes up. You're using your skills in a different way. You're interacting with people, some very basic human things, which can be done in a very simple and free way to be able to kind of make yourself feel better. And that's ultimately what Sidekick is. It's not about having this kind of magic pill that says, I'm going to fix you. It's about saying, okay, there's some very simple and very free, very easy things to do. Eat well, drink a bit more water. Don't drink too much. That, as a foundation, try some mindfulness, try some, we were speaking to a sophrology specialist, which is massive in Europe. Try some sophrology, you know what I mean? Try these different, these different ideas, and, carve out 15-20 minutes of your day, just as you would if you go and work out physically, and, try and get yourself feel better. So I found that this community, people are spending, a few hours a day, and at the end of it, they're like, I feel really good. And I feel good, and James feels good, and Michael, hope you feel good as well.
Yeah, well, definitely. And from my side, and I guess a few of the other people in the community, it's a really strange time with the whole pandemic, and a few of us have furloughed from work and things like that. And so this is perfect to give me a creative outlet aside from just being a parent and watching the Disney films all day. I felt like my brain was going to sort of turn to mush for a couple of months, and then I'd have to sort of snap back into work mode. So I think this has given me something to focus on, which I think is good for anybody during this time, I guess, is to have a purpose. And it helps that everybody's so nice, and that you guys are up for anything, really. It's not everybody would want to be doing this right now, sitting in front of a camera on a Saturday, but you are happy to just give stuff a try, which is the good thing about a lot of startups, but especially one that is kind of doing something that's trying to help people.
Yeah.
So it's good.
And I think what James was saying about, often when people have a good idea, they then go and get funding, and they then are trying to build a business model. But often, in our experience, and this is our experience working with startups in financial capacities, in leadership capacities, that business model can stifle your product. Like, you chase a market which may or may not be there, or it is there and someone gets there first, or your product isn't quite there. So our focus has been primarily, if there is going to be a sustainability element to this, so that the organization can be self-sustained in a non-profit way, but it can still earn revenue to bring into the organization to sustain it, then okay, let's think about that, and let's see how that evolves. But that's got to emerge naturally from the product.
Yeah, it's a great time for people to get involved. Basically, they're kind of getting in on the ground floor and going on the journey with you, and it definitely feels like that, being part of it. And even something like a Slack group, which is just something you have on your phone. That's almost like a little add-on to Sidekick, because you've got somebody you can just message on the group, whether you're talking about work or non-work related things. So yeah, to summarize, Sidekick is great.
Well, we are very pleased to have you, Michael. I mean, frankly, we'd never even thought of a podcast. I mean, we thought about open and honest conversations, because that's what James and I have always been up for. But I mean, maybe stupidly, we never thought of a podcast. But like you've said, actually, I think this is great for a podcast. I'd love to do it. And our position is like, well, that sounds like a great idea. Does it resonate with our purpose and our why? Well, yeah, it does. Does it align with our values? Well, yeah, it does. Well, let's just do it then. And I mean, Michael, you've been, you've been the model example. You've been proactive. You know what I mean? You've created and owned this, and that's what we want as part of that community. Like, it's not about James and I driving it. That's why we don't describe ourselves as co-founders. It's co-creators. Like, we were the first members of the community, and now we want to get more people in, and we want to get people to feel they've got a stake in Sidekick.
Oh, there's such a mixture of skills and experience that you've got in the community as well. So I think if individuals can kind of almost pick their niche to start with, so that this might be mine, somebody else's is kind of cookery recipes, somebody else is branding or whatever, then I think all of those skills will kind of mesh together eventually. But I think that's a good way to start things, is kind of focusing on what you know, I guess.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, people are giving their time. So we want this to be something that you want to get out of bed on a Saturday morning and go, I'm going to do some of this today because I want to do it and I enjoy it. And I also happen to believe in the mission and share the beliefs of what Sidekick's trying to do. So, yeah, absolutely. People have to be contributing what they enjoy doing. Otherwise, the model kind of breaks.
Yeah. And we're all awake on a Saturday morning anyway, because we've all got kids. So
exactly.
Why not? It gives us a bit of freedom, actually.
Exactly.
This is the most freedom I've had. I've had an hour and 4 minutes.
Honestly, it feels like therapy.
It's good. I like it. So I've got so many questions. So, okay, let's talk about the app itself. So what are the features of Sidekick? How does it work? I know there's so much to it. So I guess in simple terms, how does the app work? What do people get from it?
So it's a collection of different exercises, be it meditations, journaling, inspiring TED Talks, quotes to uplift people. So it's a collection of exercises that help you or potentially help you with your mental health. And you can find different exercises depending on what you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to improve your confidence, then there's certain exercises that are more designed for that. If you're trying to sleep better, we've got some stuff now around sleep. We've got some guides in there about surviving during these unprecedented times, such as surviving lockdown. And the idea is that you can try stuff out. As we said earlier, you try stuff out in a non-pressured environment. And if you find something that works for you, you add it to your toolkit. So there's a separate tab called the toolkit, which is a collection of exercises that you find useful so you can access them quickly and easily. It's a collection of all your outputs. So when you write a journal, you can access your journal there, and things like a gratitude list and achievements, you can find them quickly. So, if you're feeling a bit lacking confidence before a personal, professional situation, and you feel like you find yourself telling yourself you're not good enough or doubting yourself, you open up your achievements list or your success vault, and you see all the things you'd logged from 3 months ago, from yesterday, where you had actually achieved stuff. And it kind of, for me, that has a very instant boost. For other people, it might be coping statements, or it might be, reading some inspiring quotes from people. So the idea is you explore what you like, you find what works for you, and you create your own toolkit. And then alongside it, we have inspiration. So we have inspiring quotes, we have nudges, so we have suggestions on things you could try depending on if you want to try and boost your rest or your diet or your mindset or how connected you feel with people. It will suggest activities or things you can do, and then it will suggest external content that you might find interesting. So if we suggest you give yoga a try, there might be an interesting link to a yoga channel. If you're struggling to eat well, we might suggest something simple like keeping healthy cookbooks on your worktop, and we might push you to a curated list of the top 10 healthy cookbooks or something like that. And they change regularly. Every time you open the app, you see different quotes, you see different nudges. And the idea is eventually we'll learn from the kind of things you like. And I think we've got an ambition to try and link personality types to the types of things people find useful. So there's a kind of academic strand to the community that hasn't really been built out yet, but is something that Matt's very passionate about. And we've got a behavioral economist or behavioral scientist who's just joined the community, actually. So she wants to be, involved in working out how we can get people to engage more and take more proactive steps to manage their mental health.
That's such a lot of variety for people, which is really what they need, because if somebody has downloaded this and going in completely cold and not knowing what might work with them, you need to give them that variety, I guess, to then sort of sculpt their own toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard. It's actually a fine balance, because people have such short attention spans. You want to kind of help them find that first exercise and sort of get into the flow. But equally, you don't want to suggest something that they may not like. So as we develop, we can get smarter about sort of suggesting things while also maintaining what is one of our 6 core values, which is privacy. So all the data on the phone is stored in your iCloud account. If you want it to be, it's completely private to you. There's no sidekick server. There's nothing that we see. So anything you do is fully private to you, fully backed up, but within your own iCloud account. And when we launch on Android, it'll be a similar thing. And I think that's one of the other, as we said, one of the other values is really people's data is their data, and privacy is key.
Yeah. So how have you found your past experiences with mental health and mental well-being have helped you on your journey with Sidekick?
Well, I think from my perspective, a lot of the early exercises and tools, were my own mental health toolkit. One in particular was life balance. That's something that I'd iterated over time, and it was very, very clear to me that if you are trying to achieve a balance in your life, and especially if you've got a lot going on, you've got to spend, it's very easy to say, but you've got to spend an amount of time every day or every week on those activities to make you feel like, okay, I'm actually achieving what I want to achieve in the kind of grand scheme of my kind of life and kind of like what I've set out to in terms of goals. But then the kind of the iteration was kind of, okay, well, actually, how positive do some of these exercises actually make me feel? And you realize when you do your life balance, and you can do that on the app now, because it came from a spreadsheet that I used to do myself, is that actually you're spending a lot of time doing a lot of activities, but actually you kind of think, actually, I'm not enjoying half of these. So when you aggregate them all together, you realize you're spending 50% of your life doing things which give you 30% satisfaction. And that little graph looked at it going, oh, actually something's got to change. So it enables you to then look at it and go, okay, what can I change and how can I change it? And you may be doing a project or something where you're constantly driving towards it, and you're actually like, oh, actually, I don't actually believe in this anymore. Or I'm doing a job and I'm like, no, I don't really like this anymore. And it's just about being honest with yourself. And I've certainly found that particular exercise for me, although quite niche, really helped me on my journey, and that's why it's featured in the app to help other people, and I hope it's starting to help other people as well.
James?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but the whole idea of Sidekick was born out of my own experiences with mental ill health. So developed quite a bad anxiety problem about 3 years ago, before my daughter was born. Sought a number of different professionals, and I think, as I said, each one of them gave me something that was interesting, that worked, that has now formed part of the Sidekick app. So the first guy I saw, the hypnotherapist, had a really, really good relaxation audio, just a short, I think it's 12 or 15 minutes, where when I was on the train into work for my commute, which I found quite anxious, or on an airplane or something, then I would just put that on, and I found that to be incredibly effective. The last lady that I saw gave me a breathing exercise, a simple 4 breaths in, hold for 4, and then out for 8. And that activates the longer breathe out than the breathe in activates your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that's responsible for activating the opposite of your fight or flight response, so the kind of rest and digest. And I now do that every morning. I just find that's useful. It's kind of, you wake up and people wake up now, they're super energized. They're like, what time is it? How many emails have I got? I need to go and get to work. And sort of just stops me for, I think I only do it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So it's maybe 10 cycles of in breaths and out breaths. And that helps me. So, I say I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of different people, and through doing that, learn a lot about mental health and learn about a lot of the things that could then have made their way into Sidekick.
which is good because at least the activities and the exercises are tried and tested in a way on you guys. They may not work for everybody else, but at least it's something that's worked for you, so it may work for other people.
Absolutely, and I think that's the other idea about the community approach is that, this sounds really cheesy, but we've mentioned this, the two of us, before, about Sidekick sort of being built by the community for the community. So, one of the things we really want to encourage is, if you, Michael, have something that you use that helps your mental health, let's try and put it into the app, whether it's a worksheet that we then need to turn into a fun and engaging exercise, or whether it's an audio file that we can just drop straight in. The idea is, as we build up the content, because to be honest, the content's quite limited at the moment. There's probably 35 different exercises or 10 different exercise types. We want to add stuff in. As Matt said, we spoke to this sophrologist the other day. I've never heard of sophrology, but it's quite an interesting mix, I think, of breath work plus mindfulness plus meditation plus movement.
Also, it's massive in
Europe,
which we've never heard of. So right.
Yeah. So maybe someone would find that useful. Maybe it'd be the thing that someone's been looking for all along. So let's put it in and see what people think.
Yeah. There's a lot of different exercises that you guys are going to be able to tap into, and like you were saying earlier, just experiment and try and do you get stats on, or do you get data on what types of things people are trying, and so you can see what's working and what's not?
Yeah, so we put in some very crude analytics just to get started, and we've got 2 people now working in the community who have data science specialties. So I think, as we said before, the fundamental principle is your data is private. So anything that you do is completely private, but we can track anonymously that someone, we don't know who, that someone has opened the relaxation audio exercise, and we can never tie it to a phone, a person, anything like that, but we know that someone has used that app in Sidekick. And so we want to get much better about using that data to both inform the kind of content we add and how we prioritize the content, but also how we then personalize and suggest things to the user. So if we're looking at what you're doing, we should give something back to you. And this is, the classic thing people talk about in the corporate world about data is, what am I getting at? I'm giving you my data. What am I getting in return?
Yeah.
You're able to tailor the platform to based on what people are finding more popular and
exactly.
hopefully more useful. Yeah.
Because also I think that's where we've come up. One of the design challenges of this is, if you're going to provide people with an enormous range of content and choice, well, that in itself can be really overwhelming. So someone who's coming on to the app and they're feeling anxious and overwhelmed, it doesn't work for them. It makes them feel more anxious and overwhelmed. So we've worked very hard to come up with something that is has a little bit of guidance, has a little bit of pushing, a little bit of direction, but also in a kind of intuitive design, so that the actual suggested content isn't overwhelming. And I think as we get more and more content, that's where we're going to have to start be really thinking about it and be clever about how we display the content, so that people can, for example, when they first go in, go, okay, I know there's a lot of information here, but it seems like I'm at the tip of the iceberg, and I can control how far I go down. I don't need to be overwhelmed by this, and that's a real challenge. But that's something that we're really starting to get our heads around.
Yeah, that's probably in the next couple of months in the release. That's one of the big projects in terms of the app, is how can we make it easier to find content without it being prescriptive or overwhelming. And there are lots of ideas we've thought about, questionnaires or using what you've used before and these kind of things.
Yeah. I think using the app and where you've got the sort of 7 or 8 main categories, I think it's as somebody that hadn't used the app before until a couple of weeks ago, you've made it easy to kind of navigate to at least an area that might be a good one to start with.
Exactly.
And then hopefully, and then you can kind of dip your toe into the other ones as you go. And also the Sidekick score and where it gives you your percentages and things. I think that is a really good entry level. Even if you don't do anything else, you can just go in there and do the quick questionnaire and get your score. I think that's a good start for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the feedback you get from the outputs, the exercise, psychic score, it just makes you kind of like reflect on yourself. And you might do your psychic score and it might come out with like a 5 out of 10. And then you think about it and you're like, actually, yeah, I do feel 5 out of 10. And
Yeah.
then we say, okay, well, because you fell down, and not say fell down, but let's say you were lower in these categories, maybe rest. I mean, for us as working fathers, rest is a big one, lack of sleep. Okay, here's some external content that might help. It might be a bit of soothing music, it might be a suggestion to do a bit of meditation, mindfulness, maybe some yoga, whatever it is. But some stuff which you maybe haven't tried before, and will point you towards some interesting content which is manageable, is bite size, and for us it's vetted in terms of it's credible, but also it's a valid way to kind of boost your positivity and boost your kind of relaxation.
Yeah. So if somebody out there was kind of struggling with their mental health, mental well-being at the moment, why would you recommend that they download Sidekick straight away, as soon as they listen to this podcast?
I think it's simple. I mean, it gives you a breadth of choices in a safe environment. You've got nothing to lose by trying it out. I think that it enables you to, without feeling pressured to go and see someone or open up to other people, if you're not ready to take that step yet, it gives you that space to explore different things. And I'm sure that you'll find something there that helps you. And then that might be the start of your journey to, becoming a meditator for life, or finding people who specialize in relaxation audios or things like that. But I think it's a good place to start, rather than diving into some of these other solutions that maybe focus on one thing like journaling or one thing like meditation. I think it's just a nice, intuitive, relaxed, safe space to get started.
I think for people who have tried apps before, they don't work. I think this is a very useful alternative. It provides a very high level, overview and example of all the types of things you could delve into, which could then lead into something a little bit more focused. If you've never used an app before and you're struggling with lockdown, for example, it's something which you've got a bit more time, something that you can actually start to play around with. It's something which I've always been very keen on. You find this on the toolkit tab itself, is this idea about a well-being workout. People, and we do live in a very, physically driven world. People are always, posting pictures of themselves exercising or their bodies, whatever. But actually, what we're trying to encourage is this idea of working out your mind as well. And it's not a new concept at all. Like, there's a lot of people who are talking about it, but we want to kind of build this idea that, if you spent 1% of your day, and that's 15 or 16 minutes, doing some exercises that are relating to your mental well-being and mental health at the start of your day, or the middle of your day, at the end of your day, or broken up throughout your day, then our experience is that you feel better in the long run. And I think that's the other thing to say. Like, this isn't a quick fix. Like, your mental health, like, if you want to dive into an app and get a quick boost, yes, you may get it, but it does require, like with anything, it does require some work. And we've, whilst we don't want people to spend their lives in the app, that's not the point, because spending your life in the app will probably bring you down anyway. We want to make sure that you've got, that kind of safe space where you're able to try a few things. And if something works for you and you end up having 3 or 4 exercises, like James does his 4-4-7 or 4-4-8 breathing every day, combined with a bit of meditation or mindfulness, yoga, relaxation, whatever it is, find your combination, do that for 15-20 minutes a day and see how that changes. And I do believe, and you see that, it's a process of empowerment. You're going from a disempowered, maybe negative, low mood, lacking confidence state, and you're building better habits. But you've got to do it yourself. This isn't like this is not the magic bullet. Like, it's somewhere where you can try, but there has to be some want to actually have those internal discussions. And that's like when we were talking earlier about when people are, really willing to have those open and honest conversations about their mental health. You have to go inside first and say to yourself, okay, actually something's not quite right. I'm not feeling that great, but I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So that's really.
But the other thing as well that the app gives you is there's 2 exercises. There's the mood journal and there's the sidekick score, which both then help you evaluate objectively how you're doing. So when we say see what works for you. I think those are useful tools to bring a bit of objectivity in, so you can look back 3 months ago and see kind of how you were feeling or what your sidekick score was at that period, and you can start to see how actually spending those 15 minutes a day doing the things that work for you have had a demonstrable impact on your state of mind.
Last question. What is your favorite moment of both of your sidekick journey so far in the last couple of years?
I think they're going to be the same. James, what's yours?
This. Apart from this.
I think probably that moment when we put it out there and started getting good feedback, but also the moment when we realized this was going to be bigger than just Matt and I, that people actually wanted to be involved, that people wanted to be involved, that it was helping people, that the stuff that I was worried about as a developer, but also just as a natural warrior, like are people going to think this is terrible? Are people going to find it really confusing? Are they going to find it hard to use? And then to get comments back like, this is really intuitive, I love the design, it's so easy, hearing these things as someone who's just sat at his computer with Matt and had sessions co-creating this over 2 years and iterating and saying, oh, should we change this button or should we change this? And not really knowing what users would think, just going with our gut. To then hear it validated by people has just been, fantastic. And as Matt said, to look back at where we were 2 years ago, both in terms of where Sidekick was, but also for me and Matt personally from a mental health perspective to where we are now, is just easy to forget. But when you actually stop and think, and sometimes I need Matt to remind me, is just, just phenomenal. And I'm just so excited to see like what we can do. Like you said, we did that video for Mental Health Awareness Week in like 3 days. Like, I'm just excited. What can we do next? Like, where can we take this? Where can it go? And it's just such an exciting and fun journey to be on.
Yeah. And the same.
Yeah, it's certainly that kind of launch and that kind of people resonating with what you've put out there. Like, I think like my favorite poem, and I think I've even put it on our Sidekick Instagram, is this poem "Risk" by an anonymous person, and it talks about taking risks, and you've got to take risks. Otherwise, if you don't take risks, you don't you can't achieve anything you've ever wanted to achieve in your life. And I think the scary thing is often putting your ideas in front of a crowd, and that's what the poem says. Is like and it risks them being rejected, but the fact that these weren't rejected is a great relief. And the fact that people are kind of saying, yeah, actually, we kind of, we really like this. And I think also when a lot of the model is based around kind of, using, and fully attributing other people's kind of ideas and content and stuff like that, and reaching out to them and them going, yeah, we like what this. I mean, effectively, we're giving them free marketing and pushing users towards them. So there's a very commercial kind of argument to it. But actually, people going, no, we like this app. We like what it does. We actually believe in that a one size fits all approach doesn't work. This is what we believe, and we're therapists ourselves. We don't believe in it, but we had to specialize because this world requires you to specialize to earn a living. But we believe in this, and please have the content. Make sure you attribute it properly, as we do, because that's naturally built into our model. And we're founders of various different approaches and techniques are starting to approach us and go, we would like to put our content on your app, and we're like, well, brilliant, that sounds great, thank you.
Yeah, it's growing even in the couple of weeks I've been here, seeing what you've created. And that must have been sort of a bit strange at first, opening up your bubble to the world, and it's already achieving so much. So I'm looking forward to seeing it grow, and I imagine you guys must be really excited. So it's great.
And we're thankful and glad that you're along for us. You're along with us on this journey, Michael.
You're helping us go now. You're partly responsible.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Well, when I get an official T-shirt, James, we can't quite see your logo.
What size?
Probably XL.
We'll go with medium. And nice
relaxed fit.
Tightly fitted. Do my workout T-shirt. Cut the sleeves off.
Wellbeing workout T-shirt.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for being the guests on your new podcast.
Thank
First
you.
guest,
Thank you so
episode
much
0.
for hosting. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
thank you to anybody that's listening. Subscribe to the feed, subscribe to the YouTube channel when that's created, because hopefully this will be the start of more podcast content and more video content in general. So
And
thank
go
you.
to our website, sidekick.org.uk, if you want to find out more.
You can connect with us on social media, on Instagram at Sidekick Community, on Twitter at sidekick.com. And reach out. And if you're interested and you want to get involved, then reach out. There's no limit to what we believe we can do with this. So, and if you think you're passionate about mental health, you're interested, you've got some great ideas, and you want to participate, come on this journey with us all.
Great. And download the app, which is on the App Store and soon to be Android near future.